Hello everybody and welcome again to another, I was going to say Gullah vlog then, dearie me.
Not for a long time.
Not for a long time. Box Tail Scoop.
Yeah. I want to do like a title or some kind of introductory dance.
Okay, next time.
We should point out that obviously if you watched the previous video, you will realise that we're wearing the same clothes. That's because although this video is going to go up on the 28th of August, we will be in Brighton. So from the 25th to the 31st of August we're doing live shows in Brighton, performing during the day. So we thought we would pre-record this one, and at this very moment presumably we will be either having a lovely time doing a live show or looking at the rain and going,
oh dear,
outdoor theatre.
oh dear.
One way or the other.
But we thought we would talk to you about writing A Christmas Carol, because we did that with Hansel and Gretel and also with Gulliver when we were doing that.
Yep.
And it was a good one actually to write, a tricky one for totally different reasons from Gulliver or even from Hansel and Gretel. Like we said with Hansel and Gretel already, we used the story as a basis and decided to kind of create our own thing around.
Yes, I mean that's very much kind of a script that we've written based on the bones of that story.
And
then this is totally different.
This is very different. And with Gulliver, obviously, we had the main problem of the fact that there's no dialogue within the book, and so we had to kind of fashion that from the narration of the book. This has its own different problems, I suppose, but it has a gift to you in that Dickens writes the most wonderful dialogue.
Yes,
so
brilliant.
Actually, you've got loads to start off with. So we went back to our kind of usual writing format and we took all of the dialogue out of the book first.
Yeah, for anything that's like this, where you've got the dialogue there and you've got those, the scenes are played out and you've got all the dialogue between those the characters, we try and take all that out first.
So that was the very first job, just sit with the text, cut and paste all of the dialogue into another document. And then we then keep having the original book right there, because it's very likely that we will need the narration in some form. So once we got the dialogue, I think we did with the usual again, and we read it all through. It's really interesting when you read a book through like that, when you've stripped out all the narration, just read the dialogue and see how much or little it makes sense. And for the most part you'll find it makes quite a lot of sense. Obviously if you already know the story you can fill in the gaps, but there is a lot that is, there's a lot of exposition in the dialogue itself. Then we go back from the beginning, didn't we? It was a long time ago actually when we wrote this now. But
yeah, you then kind of go back and look at the passages they're not narration in the book, obviously they're, how would you describe them? Well, as description or, you look at those passages and see what you need in order to fill out that scene, in order to make sense of it, in order that the audience will understand
what's going on.
Yeah, what's going on, whether there's any exposition that you need in there.
And sometimes there is reported speech rather than it being actual dialogue, so you need to sort that out as well. We go through it chapter by chapter, so we very much started at the beginning and finished at the end, going through it chapter by chapter. And he's written it in staves, in fact, because I think it was it, as most of his things were, was it released as episodes?
I think it was serialised first,
And it very much feels like that, I think, when you read it. So we went through it, and what we tend to do is, I think we did the same thing with this one, we tend to split up at that point. So we'll say, right, well, we'll look at chapter 1, as it were, together, separately. So you'll go away, I'll go away, we'll create our own edit of that, and then come together and see what we have the same and what we have that's different. Which is useful, isn't it?
It's fascinating as well, because there are some lines, there are some things in there that are brilliant and that you'll both be like, yes, of course, we're keeping that. And then every now and then, you'll come to one where we actually have like a proper debate about it, where one of us will be fighting for, no, I want to keep this line, and the other one is making the case for saying, no,
it's not necessary,
we don't need it.
It spoils the flow.
It's too flabby, or it breaks the rhythm. Yeah, so...
and it is always interesting that actually, it's always interesting because you end up you finish the debate and you feel satisfied that you've got to the right point with it. Sometimes we do it over one word and then we really have to stop ourselves because it gets silly.
And that is with the caveat that we know the kind of length of the piece that we're working to.
Yes.
So it's not like we've got the luxury of saying, you've got a 6-hour series or a 3-hour play. We know that we're working probably to about between 60 and 80 minutes.
Yes, absolutely, Max.
script.
Yeah. So that's how we start with it. And we encountered, I suppose one of the main problems we encountered is, like we would normally do, is what you do with the description, the descriptive passages that you need in order to make the story make sense. Who do you give them to? Do you give them to a narrator and have a narrator? Or do you
Which we have done.
Which we have done in the past, yeah, for various things. Northanger had a narrator. Or do you try and divvy them up in some way between the other characters that are on the stage? And we went back and forth a little bit with this one, didn't we? And we wrote it first with a narrator, and then when we went back through, we decided we didn't like the narrator, and we've tried to attribute that description to other voices. So at the moment we have it starting with Scrooge and ending with Bob Cratchit, and then with the ghost passages, well, we actually gave those descriptions to the ghosts.
Yeah, and I think I like the way that makes sense to me in the way that the ghosts are in control, the spirits are in control of those episodes. You know, they're very much directing where Scrooge is going and what's happening. So that kind of it feels nice to me. Sometimes it's nice to write that narrator character first.
Yes.
Because then you've got some.
You've got something to work from. It's like stages, isn't it?
Yeah. You've got something there that you can then decide, actually, we could spread this out, we could give this to this character.
And then you have to be careful that you give it to the character in their voice, don't you?
Yes, very careful, yeah.
So sometimes it's a little bit jigsaw puzzly then, isn't it? Making sure. And we're by no means at a perfect version, we're at a rehearsal draft version, which means that it's too long, that it's very likely that we will lose some of the descriptive passages if it means that we actually see the thing, we don't describe what we can actually watch. Yeah,
quite often you'll be in rehearsal and you'll realise we don't need this section of lines because we're seeing that happen, and it's tautologist, we don't need that.
We don't need both, yeah. And we also have left in, so we try not to cut too much, too many of the sort of actual episodes in the story at this point, do we? We try and make sure that we've left them in, and then we can decide in rehearsal whether they work or not. And so we've left in. There was a big portion, in fact, of the Ghost of Christmas Present, which I was sort of saying, I'm not sure about this passage. I'm not sure it's quite tricky, for one thing. But that's not really the only reason. It was also just one of those bits that I just wasn't 100% convinced by. However, you made a very good case for it, and we've kept it for now. And we'll see what happens. And you made it make more sense to me, which was nice. Yeah,
and often those are the sections that get cut in a lot of the adaptations that you see. And we found this with our adaptation of The Wind in the Willows as well. There are a few passages in that, or a couple of chapters in fact, that often get cut.
Usually are cut, yeah.
And we wanted to keep as much as we could. There was one in particular that I was really in love with and was insistent that this had to be in the show. Yeah, he really fought very hard for it. And it worked, it's nice.
Well, the nice thing is I think that you are good at that. You do see more in something than...
I mean, you've got to have a balance, and we have had people who know that book well, who've come up to us afterwards and said, I love what you did with that little piece, or I love that you kept that in there.
Yeah.
And I think, with any luck, these episodes from A Christmas Carol, I think they could be beautiful, so if we can get them in some way, it would be nice.
So that's it really, that's how we have got to where we've got to so far, and we will do maybe a little bit more work on it before we start rehearsals, probably just a quick rejig of a couple of moments, and then obviously there'll be more work in the rehearsals itself.
It's nice that we've had a little break, in fact, because we'll probably revisit it now and with fresh eyes and change a few things.
So there we are, that's all for this week, and we will be back the following week. I don't know what week that is, I'm very confused now, with different clothes in the actual week that we're in.
And who knows what we'll be working on.
Yes, exactly.
Fingers crossed.
Oh my
We're
goodness.
getting on with the same show.